I'm Michael Montgomery from the Culinary School of the Rockies. In the next two segments, we are going to be covering emulsified sauces. In particular, we're going to be covering cold emulsified sauces. In the first segment, I'm going to show you a basic vinaigrette. In the second segment, I'm going to show you an aioli. Let's start with vinaigrettes. Vinaigrettes you can think about as parts to help you get the correct ratio. It's typically a 1-part emulsifying agent, 3 parts acid to 9 parts oil. So as you can see, you have some options here. Your emulsifying agent could be Dijon mustard, and that's what we're going to use today. It could be an egg yolk. Your acid, that's any of your vinegars, citrus juices, things like that, so that can vary as well. And then your oil would be any oil you have chosen to use. Most commonly, it's olive oil. I actually dilute my oil, and I've done that already. I do half olive oil and half grapeseed oil. I don't like all of that olive flavor in my vinaigrette, so I'm just diluting the oil a little bit so it's not quite as olivey. How you begin a vinaigrette? Give yourself a stable platform to whisk on. So as you can see, I have a mixing bowl sitting over a saucepan, and I'll just put a towel in between. This is going to make my life easier when I'm actually incorporating oil into the vinaigrette, so the bowl's not spinning around in a circle, things like that. We are going to build this basic vinaigrette, how you'd start any vinaigrette. And I'm going to start with roughly, remember I said 1 part of our emulsifying agent. Because this is an emulsion, we need help keeping 2 things together that don't really want to be together, meaning our acid, red wine vinegar, and oil. They want to resist and they want to stay separate. This bit of Dijon is going to help us bind things together and actually give us a suspended, thickened, more creamy dressing versus just oil and vinegar. Which is a vinaigrette? We're actually doing an emulsified form of a vinaigrette. So I'm using a little emulsifying agent, and then how I build a vinaigrette is really important. I'm going to start with my acid in the bowl first. Remember I said this is red wine vinegar. Could simply be lemon juice. I like to put a little bit of salt and pepper into this acid. The salt and pepper actually will help break apart and give smaller droplets in the mixture to bind together, and it's actually also giving the salt an opportunity to dissolve in the acid. It's really hard to season a vinaigrette with salt if you're trying to do it after the fact. Utilize the acid to break down that salt for us. So all I have is a little Dijon, some red wine vinegar, salt and pepper, and I'm going to whisk this until it all looks uniform. And I want to make sure that Dijon mustard is dissolved into our acid mixture. This is how, like I just said, you would begin any vinaigrette. Depending on what your base would be, you could definitely switch your vinegars. You do not necessarily need to use Dijon mustard. I happen to like the flavor of the little Dijon, and I also like that it's helping us keep this dressing suspended. Now, we are going to, while whisking, add our oil a bit at a time. I want to do a slow, steady stream so we actually get an emulsion. So as you're whisking, a very slow, steady stream, what happens initially is the oil sits right up on the surface of the vinegar. That means it's resisting and it's not actually emulsifying. So just slow down your whisk, slow down your oil, and it should pull together for you. If you notice you're getting too much oil, an oil slick is forming on the top, again, just put your oil down and work with the whisk for a while and make sure you have that emulsion back intact before you continue with your oil. Everyone likes different vinaigrettes as far as the acid, our vinegar, to fat, which is our oil. Some people like a little more tangy or acidic vinaigrettes. Some people like a more smooth, mellow vinaigrette. I happen to like a little more tang, so I just use more I use more vinegar and a little less oil to give me more acidity. And this is really a matter of personal preference. As long as you follow this basic technique of starting with your acid, your emulsifying agent, and building with your oil, you'll get an emulsified dressing. A lot of people use a blender for this, or even a food processor. absolutely fine, but what I tell all my students is make sure you can master this by hand first, and then move on to your kitchen tools that will help. I have a nice emulsion going here, so I can actually, at this point in time, start adding my oil a little faster. And I'll just slow it down if I see it's not actually doing what I want it to do. At this point in time, I've used more than half of the amount of oil. I'm actually going to taste the vinaigrette and see if it's where I want it to be. When you're tasting vinaigrettes, I would recommend having a piece of clean lettuce to taste with versus a metal spoon. Metal spoon's a little harsh to taste the vinaigrette. If you have a clean piece of lettuce, however, you can actually get an idea of what it's actually going to taste like on the salad itself or whatever you're dressing. The lettuce, being mostly water, is going to dilute the vinaigrette, which is nice because the vinaigrette is pretty strong just off of a spoon or just by itself. So actually get a more realistic taste and use some lettuce. So I've added more than half of my oil. I'm going to start tasting, and I'm going to taste on a piece of arugula because I happen to be using this vinaigrette on a nice arugula salad. So I want to get a good idea of what it's going to taste like on the lettuce itself. Tasting very good, however, it's still very acidic. So my ratio of oil to vinegar, the vinegar is still a little high. I just need to add more oil. Mellow it out just a touch, and we'll be right where I want to be as far as the balance of this vinaigrette. So I'm continuing in that slow, steady stream while whisking to maintain the emulsion. And I just want to add a touch more oil. And then again, taste with the lettuce. Absolutely perfect. So as you can see, making vinaigrettes at home is quite simple. 5-minute process. You could easily store this in something like a mason jar with a lid. So if you have a little left over, you can shake it, and that shaking motion usually will get it right back into an emulsified state, thickened up for you and ready to go. No reason to buy those store-bought vinaigrettes when you see how simple it is. If you just have some vinegars at home, a few oils, you can make it